At this point, our cut's in a really good place. And actually, we could probably call it done if we wanted to. But we're not going to do that quite yet. There are a few adjustments and tweaks that we can make to our cut that'll really give it a polished look and a professional feel. And that's what this lesson is all about. So what problems should we look for as we go through and polish our cut? Well, first, we should keep an eye out for any awkward cuts. That means any edits that have continuity problems, seem to stutter, or just generally look strange. Second, listen for any mistimed sound effects. For example, that could mean a punch that isn't perfectly lined up with the corresponding impact in the video, or it could be maybe that some sound effects that we've layered together might not be aligned correctly or timed well with each other. Also, we should make sure that there aren't any confusing moments. Is the action clear in every part of the scene? Are there any points where the viewer might get lost or have to think too hard about what's going on? And last, look for interruptions in the flow of the scene. This can refer to both picture and sound. So with picture, be on the lookout for shots that are either held too long or not long enough. And with sound, listen for moments that seem to feel empty or dull, without any real purpose. These interruptions in the flow can really take the viewer out of their experience of watching the scene, and they should be fixed as much as possible. Alright, so first things first, let's go ahead and duplicate our sequence. We'll go up to version 12. We'll call it polishing, and we'll load it up. Okay, so first thing I want to do, I'm just going to play the scene all the way through for us, just so we have it fresh in our brains. And then we'll go back through and we'll just knock out these changes and tweaks that we're going to make to it real quick. And obviously the tweaks that I'm going to make to my scene are going to be a little bit different than the tweaks that you're going to make to yours. Because at this point, everything's about just minute changes and fine tuning. And we don't have the exact same cut. So I don't want to belabor the things that I'm going to be showing you too much because it doesn't completely apply to your scene. I just kind of want to show you my general technique for going through the scene, what I'm looking for, and what I do to quickly fix things that are bothering me. And then hopefully you can apply some of those when you want to go through your own cut. So here we go. I'm going to play this scene.
You got our money now. Just leave us alone.
Get in the fucking warehouse, motherfucker. Now. Wait. Hey. Oh. Leave her alone! Motherfucker! What? Get him!
Okay, so definitely saw some things that I want to tweak. So I'm just going to kind of work front to back, bounce around a little bit, and I'll just try to kind of move through this quickly, like I said. So first thing that bugged me was this sound design rise that we had put into TT's kick. And I'll play it for you. So it sounded good at the time. After listening to it again, it sounds a little bit cheesy to me, a little bit over the top. I'm going to turn it way down, which brings up a good point. And that's that if you have a sound effect or a piece of sound design and you find yourself continually turning it down further and further and further to the point that you can barely hear it, that probably means that it's the wrong sound effect and that you just generally don't like the quality of it, or the tone of it is what I should say. And it means that you should either look for something else or that maybe you don't even need a piece of sound there, whether it's sound design or a sound effect. So that being said, I am going to turn this way down and not take my own advice and see how it sounds. And if it still is bugging me, we'll just probably get rid of it. All right, So I can barely hear it at this point. I could literally probably lift it out. It wouldn't make a big deal. I'll leave it just for the heck of it. So second thing was this, another piece of sound design bugged me a little bit. This kick, or this hit, I should say, is a deep thuddy hit when TT kicks Dan in the ribs. I'll ISO it for you. So I think that was just a bit too much for me.
Leave her alone!
Yeah, so I'm just going to turn it down a little bit. I do like the additional bass it adds to that impact, but I just think it's a little bit too much. So turn it down a few dB.
Leave her alone!
Okay. And then just kind of staying on the same note of sound, something else that bugged me was in the back here after Dan gets hit with the bottle. So I'll play this section. And something about this drone, the way it kind of, the way it leads into it after the smack. Not this, but this. That bugged me a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can maybe move that around or adjust it a little bit to sound a little bit differently. I think I'd like more of this metal whine after this hit because it sounds a little bit more dangerous. Just like when we added that metal groan or whine over at the beginning of the fight, it added a little bit of sense of kind of urgency and drama and kind of seriousness to a moment. And it let you know that stuff was kind of going down and things weren't going well for the character. And I think that adding this metal here a little bit more than the vocals necessarily in this part of the drone, I think that might play a little bit better after he gets hit so hard with this bottle. So I just moved it back here to basically where the metal was whining, and I'm just going to edit that down into my sequence. So you can see the waveform changed slightly. And I'm also just going to roll this back a frame and then literally just do a cross dissolve in between this rise and then the sound that we're going to be hearing afterwards. So I just want to smooth this whole section out a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to play the full mix, and let's see if that fixes my problem. Yep, I like that better. I think that solved it for me. All right, so something else I had an idea to do maybe in this section here. It feels maybe a little bit empty while Dan's turning around here, and even visually you can just see that our audio bed is devoid of any sort of sound effects and whatnot right here, which is fine because it's all in slow-mo and you're kind of in that world. But what might be kind of cool is if Erica, who you see just a moment later here in her reaction shot, is if you hear her somehow warn Dan to look out or something because there's, this bottle incoming. So we have her earlier in the fight, right up in this section. She screams Dan somewhere in here. I'm just going to play it.
Leave her alone!
Okay, so I think maybe what might be nice to do is actually steal the Dan from up here, put it back right before the bottle smash, and let her kind of warn Dan that he's about to be attacked, and then figure out, and then fill in this area a little bit with the scream that she does after the Dan. So I'll show you what I mean. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to steal that and drop it down here. Let's see. I'd like it to go maybe right before he reacts, so she can be the one that warns him. So that's kind of cool. I like how that plays. And I think what I'm And it sounds fine the way it is, really, because there's already so much interesting sound going on that she just kind of blends into the background there, and she sounds a little bit stylized. Yeah! Even though we haven't actually affected this audio in any way. What I might do, though, is I might put a nice deverb on this. And just the way I have to do it in Avid is I got to make a mix down. So that's what I'm going to do. Actually, I'm going to open my junk bin so I can put the mix down in there. And obviously, you know, your software is going to be different, the technique that you're going to use. Track 5. Junk bin. Okay. So there's my new deverb. So basically it's just... So I'm going to center pan it. And I'm going to add some deverb here. That's kind of neat. All right, and then I'm also going to turn down the original clip a little bit. I'm going to keep them both layered on top of each other, so you have the original plus the deverb. Sometimes if you just have something that's deverbed, and you actually kind of need to be able to understand what the person's saying, it gets a little bit muddy, and you can't totally tell. So it's nice to kind of layer the original unaffected audio on top of something with echo or whatever you're doing to it, and then just control how much, the proportion of each by, you know, adjusting levels on each. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to turn down the original maybe like another 5 dB or so. And I'm going to ISO this new kind of setup that we have and see how it sounds. All right, that sounds pretty cool. So let's play it in the scene and see how it feels. All right, I think everything has to come up. I'm just going to do that with keyframes so it's quick. You know, I might actually just bring her original all the way back to where it was, if not higher. Maybe we'll bring it back a little bit. Cool. All right, yeah, that's neat. I think that works well. And so now, obviously, we're going to have a bit of a hole up here, possibly, where we stole it from. So let's see how this plays. Leave her alone! All right. So I think I'd like, this is where we used to have her scream Dan, right in here, after he gets hit. I think I'd like to move her scream to here, and I don't think we necessarily need a scream when he gets kicked again. So just shuffle, we'll just shuffle some things around and see if it works. A little bit late. Leave her alone! Mother! Leave her alone! Mother! What? Yeah, I think that works. Okay, and now just completely bouncing around the scene. I'm going to actually bounce back to the end because I noticed something else back here. Something that didn't make sense. Caused a little bit of confusion. You can hear them talking on the set, right? It's the director giving instructions. So let's get rid of that. Okay, here he says action, so we'll just need to find some pieces of the audio where nothing kind of out of scene is happening. Cool. All right, so that's fixed. So one thing that has bothered me since day one working on this scene has been this leg grab that Dan does when he gets up off the ground by locking up TT's leg. It's always bothered me. So I really just want to kind of dive back in and see if there's not any shot that we can find that clarifies this a little bit more. It's just so hard to tell what's happening. So right now we're working with 10J-2. We're working with a medium close-up, and then we go out to a medium. So let's open up our footage bin. or our scene 10 bin here, and I'm going to see if maybe there's just something else that we missed. I'm going to check 10L, take 3. And I had actually marked this way back when I went through the footage. This is good. This is exactly what we need. This is where Dan grabs his leg clearly, and it's obvious that he's making a move. That's exactly what we've been looking for. All right. And then he also leads into a hit on mouth. Great. So let's use this. 10L, take 3. It fixes the confusing part where Dan locks up TT's leg. I'm just going to kind of time it out right. All right. So as he spins around, I think I'm going to cut into a... I mean, we could kind of actually go medium to medium. It doesn't feel like too much of a jump cut, but it might be better if we go... Basically, if we show this new shot of him grabbing his leg, 10L take 3 in a medium shot, very clear. He starts spinning around to face mouth. It might be nice to go to a medium close-up of him hitting mouth, and then you come back out to another medium of him finishing hitting mouth, and that'll be able to connect these two medium shots here. So I'm going to do that. Actually, you know what? It works better just to go medium to medium and just change the angle on it. But we need to change the timing of the scene. So this little extra overlap here, where he punches first in the first shot and then he punches again in the second shot, obviously doesn't work. So we have to get rid of a little bit of this. So I'm just going to test the visuals first before I move all the sound around. I think that's the right timing, roughly. Maybe a little bit more in the first shot. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, great. So now I'm just going to kind of fix all the audio to match. So obviously we'll just want to, well, you know how to do that. We just want to basically take all the sounds that are currently tied to the punch and move them back in line as we move the picture to match. So I'm going to cut my drone here because it has to be a little surgery on it so we can move everything back. Grab all my related sound effects and just drag it back. Great. All right, and I'm going to blend back between this drone. That's the nice thing about cutting with drones that don't really have a beat to it. You never really have to worry about screwing up your music too much because you can just kind of fade in between it anytime you want to. That hit feels a tiny bit late. Great, cool. All right, so we fixed that. That's now clear. Now, as far as timing and pacing and the flow of the scene, I think that there's a little bit too much of a delay before TT kicks Dan in the back here. So I want to see if we can fix this. Just kind of hesitates, right? So what I think I might like it to play like is something more like this. Yeah. So what did we do? I just moved it back 8 frames. And that I think that kind of changed the flow of how this section works a little bit better. All right, and I'm going to clean this back up now too. Great. And put my dissolve back on the drone. All right, and that's it. Those are the things that I wanted to make changes to in this lesson. So not too bad, just a couple tweaks here and there. And like I said before, the tweaks that you're going to have in your own scene are going to be clearly different than the ones that I made, because we each have a slightly different version of this scene that we've cut now. So I'll just go ahead and I'll just play the whole thing one time all the way through so you can see it with these changes, and then we'll move on.
You got our money now, just leave us alone.
Get in the fucking warehouse, motherfucker. Now. Wait. Hey.
Leave her alone! Motherfucker! What?
Get up.
Get him!
All right, great. In this lesson, we identified and fixed any awkward cuts. Then, we fixed any mistimed sound effects that we came across. Next, we clarified any confusing moments in the cut, like dialogue lines or picture sequences that weren't working. And last, we fixed any interruptions in the flow of the scene, whether they were related to picture or sound. For your homework, go through your own cut with a critical eye and smooth out and polish your scene. Look for the same things we look for in this lesson. That is, awkward cuts, mistimed sound effects, confusing moments, and interruptions in the flow. This is your opportunity to really make your scene shine, and to demonstrate the skillful editing of a professional. So take as much time as you need to get it right. Coming up, we're just going to perform a quick color correction on a couple shots here and there to give all of our footage a consistent look and feel. All right, I'll see you in a bit. All right, so color correction. Now, first off, let me be completely honest. I'm not a professional colorist, so I'm not going to pretend to be one. The guys that do the grading and the color correction day in and day out, they really know their stuff, and they could way more accurately describe all of the technical terms and the math and everything else behind the process. That being said, as a creative editor, I do think it's important to have at least a solid understanding of how to perform basic color correction techniques so that you don't hit roadblocks in your workflow when you run into situations like the one that we're in, where we've basically got a couple shots here and there that just look substantially different from the others. And we need to be able to quickly fix those so that our scene is ready to show to a director or to a test audience without distracting them as we're playing through the cut. Now, obviously, we're all on different software here, so I'm not going to get into the tools too much in depth beyond kind of the fundamentals that you can carry across no matter what software package you're using. I want to kind of describe basically my process of color correction on a couple different levels. You can kind of take color correction at its most basic level, and you can just adjust things like hue, saturation, brightness, and contrast. And I think we all know what effect those have. Obviously, the hue will change the coloration of the image. Saturation will increase the intensity of the colors that already exist. And we all know, obviously, what brightness does. It just raises the levels on all pixels across the entire image. And contrast, obviously, increases the disparity between the lights and the darks. Now, that's basic color correction, and sometimes that'll be more than enough to get you where you need to be. In our case, we need to basically be adjusting the hues in the shadows separately from the midtones, separately from the highlights. So I would say this is a little bit more of an advanced level of color correction. But again, it's not overly complicated. So what I would like to do is basically I want to go in and I want to be able to adjust the hues only in the shadows first. Then I want to be able to separately adjust the hues in the midtones and separately adjust the hues in the highlights. And this could be accomplished a lot of different ways. That's what's funny about color correction, is that you can basically color correct however you want. And different software is going to offer you different ways to do it. Avid's pretty nice because they give you kind of a variety of ways to do the same thing. So you can use the HSL graph right here. You can adjust it with channels, levels to some extent, curves, whatever you're most comfortable with. And maybe some software packages are only going to give you one way to do it. But I'm just going to be adjusting them here in the HSL module. All right, so basically what I want to do, I've got two shots here that are a little bit bugging me, and I've marked them both. You can see the locators on them. And obviously, already I've duplicated my sequence, gone up to version 13, and named it color. So the first shot is this one. You can see it's different from its previous and the next shot. And then the other shot I want to adjust is this one, also different from the shots surrounding it. So first thing I want to do is, it looks like some of the shadows are way redder, and basically there's just a lot more warmth to this image, kind of in the magenta spectrum. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to adjust the shadows and bring some more blues into the shadows to get it closer to this. So at least with Avid, I'm just going to kind of adjust down this way. All right, it's a little bit closer. Maybe it's a little bit too purple, but we'll play with some of these others and then kind of come back and mess with it again. And now I'm going to go into the midtones as well. And I'm going to also pump some more blues into the midtones. A good trick to use when color correcting, especially if you're making fine-tuning adjustments, sometimes you can't really tell the effect that you're having on things. So what I like to do sometimes is go a little bit crazy with my sliders. And I like to kind of see drastically what it's doing. Because sometimes when you're just working in around the kind of like the fine-tuning section, everything looks a little bit the same, and your eye might not be picking up exactly on what you're doing. But if you go a little bit more extreme, you can kind of tell what colors you're adding to the image. All right, and then I think our highlights are fine. And I'm going to adjust the master fader just a little bit to go down here a little bit more into the yellow spectrum. Okay. Now the shadows, I think, are still a little bit too red. So what I'm going to do is actually adjust them here using a different set of controls, just to kind of show you a variety of ways to do things. So if your software kind of allows you to function with things a little bit more like this, using sliders, that's no problem at all. So now I'm just going to be affecting the shadows. I'm going to change the hue a little bit. It's definitely closer. I feel like this image might need a little bit more contrast too. It seems possibly a little bit blown out. So I might just adjust the master contrast on everything. Probably too much. There we go. I think that's way closer now. So that's just basically a simple color correction that you can do. And like I said, you can use any tools that your software offers you. But hopefully, whatever package you're using will have the ability to make adjustments based on the levels. So it's really handy to be able to affect the shadows separately from the midtones, separately from the highlights. Okay, so that's that. I think that works quite a bit better. I don't think it jumps out at me anymore. I mean, maybe we could go a little bit more tweaky. There might be a tiny bit too much purple in this, but as far as just playing through a scene and not having a shot jump out as being distracting and different, I think we've solved that problem. So now the other shot is this one right here, which pretty much has the same issue. So what I'm going to do in Avid is I'm just going to steal the corrections that I've applied to this one. And I'm going to place them on this second shot. Which, great, it looks fine. And that's pretty much it. That's the color correction process as far as this scene is concerned. There were really only 2 shots to fix. It wasn't too hard to fix them given the tools that we have to work with in Avid. So go ahead and play around with them in your own software package and see how close you can get these 2 shots to the one surrounding them. All right, so in this lesson, we reviewed some basic color correction terminology. And then we looked at a quick and dirty way to perform color adjustments on the fly to give our shots a consistent look and feel. So for your homework, go ahead and color correct the shots in your cut as needed. There should really only be a couple here and there that might need a little tweaking, so this shouldn't take you too long. Most of them already have a consistent look from the grading that was applied to them. You can take a look at the cheat sheet if you'd like, where I've listed out all the exact adjustments I made to the color of each shot we corrected in this lesson. If you're on Avid, this should directly translate for you. And if you're using a different software package, the values will hopefully get you at least close to the look that I ended up with, and then you can manually tweak them further on your own after that. Coming up, we've got a quick and basic lesson where we're just going to add a widescreen matte to our cut to give it a nice cinematic look. All right, I'll see you in a bit. All right, so in this lesson, we're just going to add a quick matte to our cut, just to give it a little bit more of a cinematic look. It's just purely for aesthetics, and it's completely optional. But the main reason I'd kind of like to show you the process of adding this matte is just so I can talk about a couple different tricks that you can use in case you run into some problems. So a lot of software applications will try to just make sure that the blacks are within safe levels for broadcast. And that doesn't necessarily matter quite as much anymore as it used to. If you're going to be displaying something in the theater or on television, you do have to keep that stuff in mind. But so much content now is being uploaded online and transferred around the web. And that's all RGB. And you don't necessarily always have to worry so much about safe levels for the internet. So occasionally what you'll run into, like your software program might have a similar issue. It might not. It's kind of hit and miss the way that the particular applications handle this. But with Avid at least, you can see if we drag on a 16:9 map, depending on kind of your monitor contrast and how everything's calibrated, you may find that the black on the matte doesn't look true black. It looks a little bit washed out or gray. And that's just the software program, like I said, trying to make sure that the levels are safe. But there's a workaround, because we're going to be, personally, I would be exporting this most likely to upload to YouTube or Vimeo or send to a friend or put on some sort of video review page for a producer. And I'd want things to be true black, at least at this point of the process. Maybe eventually it's going to end up being broadcast someplace where we need to be conscious of that. But more often than not, you pretty much want things as dark and black as they can get when they're supposed to be black. So the workaround for that is just to create a matte yourself, either in Photoshop or After Effects, with super black levels. So that would mean that the red, the green, and the blue are all at 0. And I've created a matte like that in our Lesson Resources folder. So you can see Lesson 35, adding a matte, and it's a 16:9 matte with super black levels. So you can go ahead and import that, and whatever program you're using, make sure that you're importing it to include the transparency, because this the white sections obviously should be transparent to reveal the image beneath the matte with the solid black bars. So I'm just going to load this in, and you can see right here, this is a great example. You can see that the software application's black is not truly black on our screen, and then you can see what true super black looks like right here. Big difference. So anyway, you can just drop that in over your cut, and there you have it. Now you have a super black matte. It looks a little bit more cinematic, and something to keep in mind, obviously, if you are going to be matting your cuts, just to kind of give it that feel. make sure that the footage actually works like that. Because sometimes right here we're cropping off his head a little bit, but it almost looks purposeful. It doesn't look like a mistake, and it doesn't really bother me aesthetically. But occasionally you could be cutting off too much by adding whatever matte you're adding. And you could actually be losing information about what's going on in the fight, or your scene, or your drama, or your dialogue, or comedy, or whatever you're doing. You could be losing actually important information, or you could just simply be making things look weird by cutting people's faces off in strange places. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, adding mattes is always kind of a nice way just to give the illusion of an increased production value and more of a cinematic feel. Coming up, we're going to take a few minutes to finesse our audio mix to get our cut ready for presentation. All right, I'll see you in a bit. In this lesson, we're going to be finalizing the audio mix and getting the cut ready for presentation. To accomplish this, there are a couple things we should do. First, we need to adjust all our levels to a relatively safe range. We're going to shoot for keeping the peaks at -8 dB or less. Next, we'll want to go through our cut and carve out the dialogue. That basically means that we'll adjust the levels on any dialogue that might be competing with other pieces of sound. And last, we'll finesse the audio accents in the cut. We'll raise, lower, and otherwise tweak any sound effects or sound design that needs a little bit of extra attention. All right, so I'm going to duplicate the sequence, go up to version 15, call it Final Audio, and load it up. And let's just see where our levels are peaking. We want to, like I said, we want to keep them around -8 dB or lower. So let's just go to a loud point in the fight, like where he gets hit with the bottle, and see where things are landing. All right, they're landing at least at 0, if not higher. So I'm going to go ahead and just take everything down by -10. And in Avid, at least, you can only go down or up with relative adjustments on gain of 6, plus or minus 6. So I'm going to have to go -6, and then I'm going to go -4 to get my -10. And obviously, in a lot of software programs, when you make changes like that, any sort of filters that you have on your soundtracks are going to become unrendered, which they did here in Avid. Some of these plugins, like the deverbs and the pitch shifts. So I'm just going to go ahead and re-render those real quick. All right, and now let's see where we're landing with our levels. Nice. Peaked right there at -8, so I think we're on track. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just kind of start here at the beginning, and we'll just kind of work our way through and make any changes or tweaks that we think we need to make.
Wait. Hey.
Leave her alone!
All right, and this might be a little bit more than a tweak what I'm about to do, but actually this section here, and maybe it's because now our drone is lower, but it just feels a little bit empty between the time that Dan falls onto the ground and the time that Dan says leave her alone. Listen to it again.
Leave her alone!
So there's just kind of a little bit of an audio hole there, and I think what I'd like to do is put this metal whine from earlier in the fight up into this little section and see if that kind of feels good.
Leave her alone! Leave her alone!
Yeah, that feels good. That's actually something we probably should have done last lesson when we were fixing problems and polishing the scene, but I didn't really notice it until we kind of started lowering our levels a bit more. But anyway, so that works good. Let's keep going.
Motherfucker! What? Get him!
All right, now this block here where he blocks mouth, think I'd like to raise that a little bit. It's feeling a little bit faint to me. So just to make sure that every move in the fight has a definitive accent with audio is really going to help things kind of keep their rhythm and their pace.
Get him! Ha!
All right, now this line from TT, you can pretty much hear what he's saying, but I do feel like it's being stepped on a tiny bit. So I would like to carve it out a little bit from the drones and whatnot that are happening beneath it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to increase the size of those tracks so I can see things a little bit better. Here's his line right here on tracks 3 and 4. And what I think I'm going to do is just kind of manually keyframe a dip in the drones that are going on underneath, just to kind of give this a little bit more audio space, the dialogue a little bit more audio space to be heard. I'll probably drop it maybe 6 dB or so. All right, and that's a little bit too much of a sudden drop, unfortunately. So it's one thing you don't want is you don't want it to be sounding like your music is rising and lowering strangely for no reason. So sometimes you need to really make it a gradual change. All right. And I feel like this grab of the wrist is a little bit strange sounding now. There is a nice block in here. Again, I think probably a lot of these blocks got a little bit too quiet when we changed our levels. So I'm going to probably be raising quite a few of them. Okay. All right. When he backhands Dan at this point right here, I don't feel like, or I'm sorry, when Dan backhands Mouth, I don't feel like you really hear this impact as much as maybe you should, and you would think the Mouth would probably react a little bit more verbally. And we do have a pain grunt right here, but I'm not really hearing it too much. It's really soft. So first thing I'm gonna do is I think it needs to be closer to the hit. So there he's hit right here. So I'm gonna move this back, this pain grunt from Mouth, and I'm also gonna jack it up in volume quite a bit. It's negative 10 right now. I'm gonna bring it all the way up to 0 and see how it sounds. Oh, you know what? I was modifying the wrong track. Let's see. What are we on? 3 and 4? Okay, here we go. So it's at negative 17.5 actually. So I'll probably bring it up to negative 7 then. Okay. All right, that works well. And then again, there's another block in here that I think needs to be raised. This little guy right here. So I'm going to jack that up a bit. Maybe 5 dB or so. 6. All right, great. I think that works. So now all of our levels are in safe ranges. We've made some tweaks to the various specific sound effects, and all the important dialogue is pretty clear. And most of the important dialogue really in this particular scene happens before we really get into any sort of sound design or craziness going on in the music bed. It's all pretty much right up here, this little setup that we have. And then once the fight starts, I mean, you know, obviously we mixed out this line, you know, come over here, or whatever he says at this point, just so you can hear that a little bit better. But most of what's being said is just kind of screams and yells and everything. So that wasn't too much of a concern. If your scene had a little bit more like character acting and story going on throughout it, like let's say in some sort of car chase or something where characters are talking or yelling at each other in the process, it'll be a little bit more important that you focus pretty heavily on carving out that dialogue throughout the scene. Alright, so in this lesson, we adjusted our audio levels to be within a safe range. And next, we carved out the dialogue throughout the scene. And then, we finessed a few audio accents here and there. So for your homework, go through your own cut and finalize your audio mix by making sure that your audio peaks are below -8 dB, making sure that the dialogue is clear and audible, and by adjusting any of your own audio accents that you think are too loud or too soft. Coming up is the first of 3 bonus lessons we'd like to offer you. In this first lesson, we'll teach you how to edit your punches and kicks to look a little bit stronger and more powerful in the cut. Alright, hope to see you in a bit.